Welcome back everyone for episode 6. So one of the first questions I usually get from people is, how do I start investing? Well, let's assume that you have a nice checking and saving account now with at least 6 to 12 months of living expenses saved up and extra money coming in. Now might be the right time to start thinking about opening up an investment account. Here in Canada, we have two types of advantageous investment accounts. Advantageous here means you get special tax treatment on them, so that's why it makes sense to open them up. They are called the TFSA and RRSP. So first one, TFSA, or the long form tax-free savings account, is where all investment gains and withdrawals are totally tax-free, hence the name. It started in 2009 for, you guessed it, encouraging Canadians to save and invest. But obviously you cannot invest an infinite amount of money tax-free, or else the government would probably go bankrupt from the lack of tax revenue. So every year, since you are 18, you get an annual contribution limit. In simple language, the contribution limit is the total amount of money you can put into the TFSA. The current annual contribution limit is $6,000, and it goes up slightly every year with inflation or remains the same sometimes if inflation is low. Your contribution room for the TFSA stacks, so that means even if you never put in money before, you might have a healthy amount of contribution room from past years added together. The TFSA itself is just a boring old account. Itself, it is not an investment. Just an account like any other sort of account, checking or saving. It comes in different varieties, such as the high interest TFSA, which acts very much like a savings account, earning interest on the money you keep in it. Or there are the more fancier self-directed TFSA that lets you buy stocks, bonds, funds, and all other types of investments in this account, with obviously the hopes of increasing the value of your TFSA through making good investment decisions. The TFSA is usually the best place to start investing once your checking and saving accounts are buffed up. It usually makes sense to max out the TFSA before going into other accounts such as the RRSP, unless, well, you make a big salary, somewhere above 70 or 80,000 annually at least, then the RRSP is worth a look first. For shorter term goals and investment, the TFSA also makes much more sense than the RRSP. We will discuss why next. Now the RRSP, or long form registered retirement savings plan, is great but not as great or tax advantageous as the TFSA. This account is what experts call tax deferred. Tax deferred just means that your money in the account and any investment gains of any sort are not taxed while it's still in the RRSP. But once you hit the retirement age of 65 or whatever, if you're retiring earlier or later, and start to withdraw money from this account, the RRSP, it will be taxed like typical income. The advantage here generally comes from contributing to the RRSP when you are in your peak earning years. So hence you're in the high income tax brackets, and then taking this money out in retirement when you're in a lower tax bracket. The RRSP, similar to the TFSA, has a contribution room, which is usually calculated as a percentage of your reported income in past years. This amount also stacks, and you might have unused room from past years, especially if you have been earning incomes in the past. Since it is made with retirement in mind, it is hard to take money out of the RRSP before 65, unlike the TFSA, and you will be heavily penalized if you do. The only ways to get around this is in withdrawing money for buying your first home or pursuing full-time education. But even then, you have to go through a lot of paperwork and hassle to do so. Also, like the TFSA, the RRSP is just a boring old account like any other account. It is not an investment in itself. So you can get a variety of types of RRSP, like in high interest RRSP, which acts like a typical savings account, or you can get the self-directed RRSP also, which lets you buy stocks, funds, bonds, and other investments in the account in hopes of investing to increase the value of your RRSP. Both these accounts, the TFSA and the RRSP, are pretty easy to open. You just have to walk into the bank with some government ID and talk to a financial advisor. So once you're ready, these are important first steps to take in getting your personal finance game to a higher level. So that being said, please do come join me next week as we talk about putting some money into actual investments through picking funds. Until then, take care.